Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Someone told me I should use this whiteboard, and if you hear that dripping noise, that's my roof actively leaking. Ooh, we'll talk about that later. I did try to erase this, even with rubbing alcohol. Someone used permanent marker to write this on here, so I won't be able to erase it, but we can just act as if whatever tasks we put on here are very enthusiastic. So we'll start and we'll go from there. All right, guys, to kind of bring you guys in, we have our priority list and our secondary list. This list is going to expand as time goes on. So we'll just go through a couple of things. The gutter on the east side needs to be done. It's halfway done right now. For some reason, God hates me, and every time I go out there, it starts pouring rain. It's been raining for a week straight. So I'm almost considering doing a wet patch on that for now, and then coming back and trying to get everything done relatively soon, within the next week. Just as I discovered right now, there is a slight annex roof leak. And I will put up the footage right after this to kind of show you what I did to rectify that. But the reason I even found out about it, because it wasn't actually leaking for the past couple of months, is I came here to use this whiteboard. And it is right here. And you can hear it drip. It's dripping. So, as you may expect, there are a lot of stains in the roof, just randomly from water. Like, I'll show you, there's a pretty bad one right here. That's a big stain. This truss over here, yeah, well, there's a stain there too. And the one above me is really hard to tell, but you can see it's slightly different colored than the other ones. So, but here's the thing. I was just up there, and there are a lot of rust holes, I suppose, at the joints and seams of where they put this stuff. So it is very possible and very likely some of these leaks have been already fixed or rectified, but also at the same time, we can never be sure. So it's been raining for about 5 days now straight, and basically that's the reason why. So anyways, so that is very important. Annex roof, drip, drip. So the next thing we have to do is winterize the house. So even though right now I decided not to turn on the water because the central boiler and the heat system, the steam heater, doesn't work, we still should do some of these things just for future and just to make sure nothing goes bad. So one of those things is heat tape. So I bought a bunch of heat tape. Today we're going to be doing some testing on that heat tape to make sure it works properly, and I'll show you how to do that, and some new tools I'm using to do that with. Box up the utility room. So the utility room right now has, I'll show you later, but basically you can see light through those windows. They're not actually windows. There's one fan with no louvers, which you can literally see outside, and then there is a louvered window that just has random stuff going through it, like the exhaust for the pump and stuff, the backup generator. And there's another window that's just a piece of wood. So ideally, what we'll do is we'll take all of those out and we'll box up. We'll not necessarily use windows because we don't have to, but we'll probably create like a pressure treated wood box with some sort of plastic laminate on the outside, so like it's resistant to splashing. And then we'll try to insulate it a little bit and then put those in and perhaps spray foam them in. I think that'll probably be nice just to keep a little bit of the insulation down there. So that is box up the utility windows. Heat rooms up to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and with emphasis on wet. So some of those rooms, the walls have been drying out, but the reason why they were kind of crusty when we were scraping them is that's because it's gone through a freeze-thaw cycle. So once you have, like, let's say wet block or concrete and it freezes, the water is going to expand, and it's actually detrimental to that block. It's going to cause it to freeze and then essentially like just crumble. So we want to keep those. We're not 100% sure how dry they are. We can kind of get an estimate from our humidity meter on the wall, but just to be perfectly safe, because we can't test between the floors or the joists, we're gonna heat those to about 50 degrees. That will ensure that water doesn't freeze. And if it doesn't freeze, it can't thaw, and it'll have more time to dry out, especially in the wintertime when the humidity is really low. So this one is something that's actually technically higher up on the priority list, but I'm trying to avoid doing until this stuff is done. Well, this definitely is done. I don't actually know if this is going to be rectifiable by the end of wintertime, because that roof is really big and really poorly done. So to patch that one area is probably going to be difficult. So I might have to heat this space up here just to prevent it from freezing, or run heat tape around somewhere to kind of keep that rib a little bit warm so it doesn't freeze up. But that brings me back to the heat tape. Secondary is we have a bunch of doors that are really leaky. That'd be nice to seal those bad boys up. We have a bunch of windows. They're all leaky, to be honest. And then brace for winter. So these windows we have here are all single pane. And if you know anything about windows, it's calculated by U value. So U value calculates insulation value, and R value is the resistance of heat to escape. So U value is exactly the inverse of R value. So 1 divided by the U value would bring the R value for a window like this. So to give you an idea, single pane glass is a U value of 4.8. So you heard that correctly, 4.8 U value, not R value. So the actual insulation value of these windows would be like R, I don't know, 0.2, something like that. You'll have to check the math. Maybe I'll put it down in the description. So these are really bad. An average like $200, $300 window for 36 by 60 at, let's say, a home store would probably have somewhere around 0.3 U value. So that roughly translates to about 3.3 R value. A standard 2x4 stud wall has a 13, R13. So your stud wall is more than 4 times more efficient than helping heat not escape from your house. So I think that even just changing out some of these windows would really help the insulation value of this place. The block walls are also not great. These are like less than 1 R value. I think it's like 0.5 or 0.2, whatever it may be. So that's something we might want to explore as well. But do the easy things first, and that would be, you know, change out some of these windows. And these are very, very leaky. So I can feel a breeze come through these cracks. So I did buy, I'm sure you guys have ever seen, like it's made by a company called Duck. They do plastic wrap for the windows. Basically, it seals it up. And the whole purpose of that is to try to create, number one, an insulation barrier of air between the window and here, and also stop that blow through of air. So I did buy a bunch of those kits, so I think I might seal up some of those windows. The third floor is really bad because it has these old steel windows and there's no actual real seal. It's just a thin piece of metal that seals it. So those are the things. I also have to remind myself to drain the water tank, even though I'm throwing that out. I don't want water sitting in there over the winter. And then also to re-insulate some of, I really have to check the main service line as well. So I'll put those down. And there we go, added to the list. So those 2 things need to be done. The boiler has already been drained, the steam boiler. We already took out the recollection, the condensate pump system in the AC episode. And I've already drained like 45 gallons of water or more out of the annex boiler, which is a water heater for radiant water heat, which also brings my point to all of these are definitely frozen and busted. So this entire system at some point in time will need to be done, which reminds me I need to put in demolition on the other side. Since it's raining right now, I can't really do anything outside. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna test out some of these things and get ready for the heat wrap portion, which is winterize house with heat tape. Also, I'm really hoping this is a warm roof because if you look up there, there is no insulation at all. It's just metal. So if it's a cold roof, there's going to be a lot of condensation building up on there. So that would have to probably get spray foamed with closed cell spray foam or something. But given the circumstances of this leak, I kind of don't even trust that, just because you might be sealing in, moisture above there. And if we redo the roof also, it'd be very difficult for that moisture to escape. So I think this whole roof is going to get lifted. If there's no insulation, I'll probably consider doing a warm roof, which means putting insulation on the outside of the roof instead of on the inside. That's very popular with flat roofs. And then doing another roof over it, over the insulation. And I would really like to be able to extend the roof past the actual outside wall, and then eventually at some point in time run a insulation, exterior insulation around the entire building, like a blanket on the outside. That would be the most ideal. I don't think my budget really permits that, so that's going to be an issue, but we'll see. All right, we're going down into the basement. 4 days straight of heavy, heavy rain. Basement surprisingly is dry. But we're down here to kind of, and I'll basically keep the lights off so you guys can see. That is that fan I'm talking about. Those are those louvers I'm talking about. The other one seems like okay, but a little bit of light comes through. So, yeah, this is what we need to fix. So obviously, this has been, I guess, boxed in to some extent, but obviously, literally, outside light is coming through, so this needs to be sealed up. I mean, I could just seal it up over this. I didn't realize there's a pipe that comes through here. That is a exhaust pipe for that boiler that just shows up. Okay. So that's something to be considered. As you can see, the outside where that turns down. We have a louver here. I feel air coming through this, and another copper pipe that is coming through. So I don't know what that is connected to. Well, it is connected to the condensate pump, but I don't know why it's going outside, unless if you wanted to pump the water outside. That also doesn't really make sense, but what does? And then we have a flared line here. It actually looks like a brake line, and someone put spray foam into these hole cavities. That looks kind of old. So those are the things that need to be done down here. But before we do that, we're going to do a couple other things. I wonder if this is open. Does this have a huge hole at the... Yep. All right. I was going to stick my finger in that, but that obviously isn't a good idea. That's the annex power. So we will... Those are things we need to take care of. Obviously, number one is the east side gutter. It's currently raining. I'm probably going to go up there, but probably not film it, just because it's raining, and I don't think this camera is water resistant. The GoPro is, though, so maybe I'll bring the GoPro out there. Oh, I should probably take this time to also check some of the other floors. I just turned on the freezer, and I'll show you pretty quick why. In the wintertime, it's common for a lot of these pipes to freeze. So what I've bought is I've gotten an assortment of these essentially heating tape, pipe heating cables. So they're heat tape. So essentially what it is it has a thermostat. It plugs into a 110 outlet, and you wrap this around a pipe. And when the temperature drops below, let's say 40 degrees, well, that says works up to negative 40 degrees. What will happen is they'll turn on to keep the water from freezing. But the biggest problem with these things is, number one, if they're made by, let's say, a third-party manufacturer, or they're made from someone that you never heard of, for instance, Oak Leaf Designs for Green Life, you don't really know how well they work. So a way to test this, and this is also not necessarily something everyone can do, but now everyone can do, is you take these and you throw them in the freezer. All these thermostats should recognize that the water has frozen or about to freeze. So you put these in there, and then you plug this in. And after you plug it in, you can use a thermal camera like this. This is made by TOPDON, and they actually sent this out for review. I actually also have a FLIR thermal camera, so I'm very familiar with cameras like this. And essentially what you do is you'll view the coil, and if it's heating up, you'll know these work. So a lot of times homeowners install these and then there's a short in them and they don't work. Also, something else to make note of, these apparently do catch on fire a lot when they're installed improperly. So I'll show you guys how to install this, and there's multiple places I would like to put these. So one is the service line in the basement. Two, if you guys previously recall, in this annex, well, the breezeway ceiling, there's actually a pipe that goes all the way through. It's insulated, but I don't think it's enough, and it doesn't hurt to have a backup. So when I run a new pipe through this ceiling, or in, let's say, you know, this raceway or a new raceway, something like that, I can tape one of these to it to ensure that just in case it drops below a certain temperature, I don't have to worry about it freezing. So, and that's probably why they have that heater over there, because they wanted this to be heated. And the bad part about this is all glass, single pane glass. This side's black, and that's the outside. So 3 sides of this is the outside. And literally that pipe running through here is going to be cold in the winter. And that supplies all the water to the other side. So if we can find a way to prevent that from freezing, that would be fantastic. Personally, I am leaning more towards running the pipe inside the breezeway through some sort of case conduit that can be opened and serviced and checked over time than running it straight through the ceiling. If it was subgrade or internal to the house, I would recommend doing that. That way you don't have to think about it. You know, it's not going to ever freeze, or at least shouldn't. But the problem is, since this is literally the outside, above this is the outside, and in here is going to get cold. If it freezes, it's going to be a huge pain. You're going to have to cut through the ceiling again, replace the pipe. It's hard to check on the pipe. You have to remove part of the ceiling to check on the pipe, all kinds of stuff like that. So if it is in a place that is accessible, and keyword is accessible, I'll try to make it so that it's hidden, but also viewable. Maybe do larger crown molding and then run the pipe behind it. That way, you won't have to worry about it. In case you ever had to service anything, you can easily just open it up and check it out, which is kind of what I want to do. But that's also where this comes in handy, is if you do have burst or frozen pipes, anything that changes throughout the building, you can actually view them with a thermal camera through the wall. So I've always had one of these in my toolkit, and TOPDON sent this one out. I will put a link in the description. They are having a Black Friday sale. These used to be crazy, crazy expensive. Like, I remember, I think I bought my FLIR used at auction, and I really didn't want to buy it because it was so expensive. I think it was over $1,000. And these, I think, TOPDON told me they're on sale for $369 this Black Friday. And don't get me wrong, that's still a big chunk of money, like, but it does help definitely diagnose things. If you have a leak in the wall, I had a friend's house where he had a slow leak in a pipe behind his bathroom, and he said, I don't know why, my rear wall is always moist, and straight with the thermal camera, we could tell exactly where the water was coming from, because the cold water would spray on the wall, and it would be a different temperature to the rest of the wall. So enough of me rambling. I'm gonna go pop all of these into the freezer and go upstairs, do a survey of the second floor, and cross my fingers, hopefully nothing bad is happening. So I am doing a survey of second floor. This seems super dry just because, even though it's been raining for quite a while, and this is obviously the side we repaired. We can take a look on the thermal camera. Nothing looks like much has changed. Well, that's the electrical outlet, so that's very normal. This wall also looks pretty good. That's the electrical outlet as well. I'm gonna take a look on this side. Yep, seems fine. Everything seems about the same temperature, which is good news. Because a lot of and I'll show you what a bad room looks like. This room, albeit still damaged, looks okay. Nothing looks out of the ordinary. Despite this side actually hasn't been repaired yet. I think the reason why a lot of this was bad was because the gutters were clogged and they were actually backing up. So that's good. This room Looks dry, feels dry. That's good. I don't see any new damage on this. This room was the worst. Also looks dry, seems dry. So that's good. This is our room that has leaking. So I have a heater in here, and you can see immediately. So I literally just cut out the gutters above this. That's why this is leaking now, because the other one wasn't as bad. But here, I'll show you on the thermal camera immediately. You see how there's a very dark blue spot here. And then if you go up, you see how it's really dark around here. And if you look at the walls around it, it's light. It's not dark. And all this dark area here is water. That is moisture. That is moisture right there. And you can see that very clearly even on the floor there. That's wet. This is actively leaking. All right, let's go to another room and see. This was the other room. Very obvious. You can see it's wet. I mean, you could physically see it's wet there too. Right above here, 3 days ago is where I ripped out all the gutter, and that's why it's leaking more or leaking, because I was going to redo that and it started raining. In my opinion, I thought it was going to stay dry, and clearly that was inaccurate. So today I'm going to be suffering. I'm going to be going up there, and I guess I'll bring the GoPro because that's waterproof. I'm going to scrape out the rest of that crap, and tomorrow is not supposed to rain. So I'm going to do a wet patch tomorrow, try to dry it out as much as possible, do a wet patch, level it, and then try to coat it probably within 2 days. I'm sure I remember telling you guys one of the reasons why I stopped working on the gutters, as of late at least, was because I have a shoulder injury and a hip injury. And I don't know why, every time I think I'm healed, I go lift something up that's, in my opinion, not very heavy, and I end up re-injuring myself. So that's essentially what has been happening, and this is definitely something that I should have, remedied and rectified beforehand. But once again, life gets in the way. I'm not super concerned. That side is not a structural wall. The I-beams run this way along the wall, so that side actually isn't structural. It's not holding any significant amount of weight. But also, I mean, once again, you don't want water in there. So it's been raining for 4 days or 3 days, I think. So I just have to go up there now. I'll grab the GoPro and scrape off the rest of it, clean it up, and then wet patch it. Hopefully that will hold. We'll see what happens. All right, fresh out of the freezer. We got a few here. Alright, so we got this guy here. Let's plug those in. See how that is. Not that cold, but I don't know if this has a thermostat on it. Let's get that unplugged. Alright, so we can currently see on our thermal camera, nothing is heating up. But you can immediately see this coil is starting to heat up. So there you go. You can see immediately all of these coils are heating up. So that's heating up. So that's good. This works. Last two bad boys in. This is probably because they're frozen. All right. Bam. And now they're plugged in. And we slowly see if they're heating up or not. So the screen is relative to the temperature around it. So as those coils heat up more than the actual ambient, everywhere around it will get a colder temperature. So let's see. Oh, there it is. So you can see right there, that coil right there, the yellow one, is heating up, or the blue one I should say is heating up. And then you can see over there, this coil is also heating up. So that's nice and heated now.
You can also pull snapshots out of the camera as well. So here are those coils heated. You can see how warm they are and the ambient temperature. And I was also able to get a couple guest shots of a special guest of ours. And here's another shot of her looking straight at us. I believe she is trying to tell me she is hungry.
All right, so that is the TC004, and I think this is a pretty useful tool. Like I said, I do also have a FLIR. Now that we know those lines are actually working, we can actually install them. So I think in a future episode when we do plumbing and a little bit of winterization, we're going to install those. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, I have to get back out on the roof, even though it's raining, and try to get more done on those gutters.